Well, I grew up in abusive home. My mother was severely abused. She had two marriages, one to my father, and there were five girls, and he was an alcoholic. Uh, from the information that I did get, when he went off to the war, World War II, and he came back, he was a heavy drinker, and that went throughout his life. And my mother and him didn't get along, and he would abuse her. I witnessed one fight with my mother and my dad. And then my dad was gone. She had divorced him, and I think I was like in the third grade. And then later on, she met this other guy, and she ended up marrying him. Well, that was the worst thing because, like the old folks used to say, out of the frying pan into the skillet. Well, let's just say we all got burned because he was very abusive to her. Not the first year, but the second year. I witnessed him busting her eardrum, almost putting her eye out. We were not safe as girls in that house. He raped my oldest sister, and I was a witness to that. I couldn't have been no more than 10 years old. Um, I would share with people that when you're living in a house with a person who is a pedophile, everybody's trying to find ways to protect themselves. And my way was always wearing not one set of pants, but two sets of pants. And even going to sleep like that. And trying to find ways to protect myself. Because we had one bathroom, and there was this, what we call it was the TV room, this little room back behind the bathroom. And we always had to go and shut the door, and there was no lock to it. And as little girls, when you go to the restroom, he's opening the door and peeking. So you already know now I'm not safe. And then our mother wasn't providing safety because she was unsafe herself. And I used to be really angry with her. And then one night, I don't know how old I was. I was a real small kid, and they had gotten into a fight. And back then, there were radiators in the floor or in between the walls. This is how you get the heat. And I could see from the bedroom that I slept in into the bathroom, and he had beat her up real bad, and then he physically assaulted her. And I started crying. And I raised my hand up in the air and said, Lord, you're the only dad that I have. And I believe from then on, because of me calling on the Lord at that young age, he in turn came into my life, protecting me and leading me. Now that I think about it, I didn't understand all that. Though we went to church, we only went to church. I didn't really understand the scriptures and that God has a plan for me and so forth. But I always talked to him, and he was always my help and my safe haven, especially when I was upset. And in scriptures they say he's close to the brokenhearted, and I was broken. And after I reported what the stepfather had did to my sister, my relationship with my mom and it wasn't there. And she got upset with me. And so therefore I became the enemy of the house. And everyone would accuse me of everything, or always telling I became a liar. You're just like your daddy. Your daddy was no good. So I internalized that. Well, if my dad's no good, then she thinks I'm no good either. So there was no loving relationship. And as all of us girls start getting older, we really didn't have that camaraderie that we should have had, because you're growing up in the house like every person for themselves to try to stay safe and close. And plus, my mom, in her brokenness, she the only way to control part of her life was controlling her children's life. So it's not like she came and, oh, I love you, things will get better. We didn't have any hope like that. It was always despair. So I grew up in despair. So when the words to the poem started coming to me, in such a way that helped me to understand my mom and not be angry with her. Because some people, when they're broken, they hurt themselves. And then some people, when they're broken, it's like a glass. When you break it and the sharp edge, they'll take their sharpness to cut other people because they're broken and trying to find a way to make themselves look better or feel better. And that's the way she was. And also the Lord had to teach me to open up my eyes to, we are not perfect people. We're sinful and we all make mistakes. The thing about it is to repent, ask for forgiveness, and seek the Lord that He come in your life and be the one that directs your life. And so one of my siblings I would talk to, and she is so torn up about our lives, and she said, well, she never told us she loved us, and she was talking about some of the things that had happened to us in this house. And so I remember after talking to her, this poem came to me, and it's called Complicated. Her love is complicated. It twists and turns into a knot you can't unravel. Her love is complicated, tied into a bittersweet song. If you linger and go too deep inside, you'll find the unhappiness waiting to attack. For her love is complicated. The joy is hidden behind her eyes where no one can see. She let the darkness overtake her heart. If you touch her, like a red rose, beautiful, but the thorns from her journey in life will prick you. She will have no sympathy for your pain. There will be no explanation, no cover of sweet melodies for your hurt. Your wound will lay open for all to see. She did not ask you to love her. Her love is complicated. And when I wrote that, I shared that with her. And I said, she's complicated because of the brokenness. And trying to tell her, the reason, explain why we need the healing. Because we're broken too. And we have to be careful and not to let the brokenness turn into darkness of our heart, or we'll reject everything, including God Himself. And so that's a process. And you don't get over it immediately. So as all of this is going on with me, I said, I realized that He was healing me to share my life with other people who have gone through similar situations. And I always said, well, I want to talk to women who've been in abusive situations. And I tried to connect with different organizations, but they don't know who I am, so it didn't work. So in God's time, in His way, a door was open. And so every other month, I get to share a little bit of my life with some women at a shelter in the Cleveland area that my church participate in every other month. And I told my husband one time, I said, I want to share with the women. And he looked at me and he said, you already are. So I had to think about it. I said, See, the Lord already opened up the door. God does things sometimes so quickly, so subtly, that you still asking for a prayer to be answered, and the prayer is already answered. So those are lessons too that I'm trying to learn. And when the book was published and people brought the book, and then I started getting feedback, and some people had never went through what I went through, but some of the poems they told me was healing to them. Some people have cancer, and they wrote me back and said, oh, it eased me. And so that kind of took me aback, because I was like, it's doing that? You know, God can do some things that's so awesome that your brain can't really process that. And so it's not just a book I realize about people that's been abused. It's a book also about God's love and the healing process, and how he loves you to heal you and not to harm you, because he really have work for you to do. So when one is down and you're up, you're to reach down to encourage and lift that other person up, just like when we're down and he reaches down and lifts us up. He wants us to love as he loves.